We're starting things off today with the 1988 killer doll movie Child's Play, about a serial killer named Charles Lee Ray, affectionately known as Chucky, and is gunned down one night by the police at a toy store. Just before he bites the dust, through an act of voodoo, Chucky manages to transfer his soul into a doll and vows revenge against the cop that shot him, and also against his partner in crime who ditched him at the scene. A young boy by the name of Andy receives the popular doll as a birthday gift, and as expected, people start dying. On the road to Chucky's revenge, he finds out from his voodoo witch doctor that the only way to get out of the doll is to transfer his soul into the child, and that becomes his main objective towards the movie's conclusion. Child's Play has a fairly ridiculous premise, and it's rather shocking how well it is acted and how seriously they managed to pull everything off. I think Brad Dourif's voice acting for the doll is about as good as it can get, and it's one of the definitive features of that iconic character. The evolution of the doll in the movie is great, and the amount of work that went into bringing that character to life is rather incredible. If you just watch any of the behind-the-scenes footage, you'll see what an exceptional production that it is. I love the tone to the film. I think it's broodingly dark and sinister. The musical score is also quite unique for it and helps things to move along rather nicely there.
Well, Child's Play is probably one of those movies that shouldn't be nearly as good as it ends up being. For the most part, the plot takes itself pretty seriously, and generally speaking, I think pretty much from beginning to end, the movie's a pretty exciting, pretty good movie. To be honest, I don't have many complaints about the movie. I think, most of the performances are fantastic. Of course, Brad Dourif's voice acting is amazing. Most of the death scenes are, if not, great, at least they're decent. So, I'm not sure, it's one of those movies where, I've seen it since I was a kid. I've seen it so many times, I'm sure you have too, that I can't think of much I have issue with.
Yeah, I remember when the movie came out on DVD. Oh, and just before I go into this very small story, I think it's worth mentioning that this is obviously my all-time favorite film. But back when DVD was just a very new thing, I actually bought a copy of it on DVD before I even had a DVD player. So I had the DVD. And this is back when DVD players were really expensive, very new. It's kind of like back when VHS was new. It was really expensive to not just get a VHS player, but if you remember, well, you probably don't remember, but
I do not.
Back when VHS was new, to buy a new copy of a movie, you'd have to spend up to near $100. So, and I remember a promotional ad for Child's Play where Chucky's introducing the film Child's Play on VHS, and he's like, you can get it for only, I think it was like $70.
Oh boy.
That's kind of like how expensive it was back then. But with DVD, I did buy the DVD before I had a DVD player, and once I finally got something to play it with, which I believe was a PlayStation 2 when the PlayStation 2 came out, and I was able to use that as my DVD player, I pretty much watched it every single day for at least a few weeks.
That is some dedication.
I think a part of that is because I'm so used to watching it on VHS, suddenly on DVD, the picture quality is so much better. And of course, when you move to Blu-ray, it even jumps up again there. Yeah, for a lot of my favorite movies, seeing them for the first time on DVD, it was a really great experience to just watch over and over again. Just, you don't have to worry about all the fuzziness and all the problems that come with watching a VHS. Yeah, so I watched it. I've watched it. I wouldn't even be able to tell you how many times, but certainly over 100 times.
Now, did you actually happen to catch this when it came out in theaters?
No. Well, I was born in 1984, so
okay.
I'm not that old.
My mistake.
Yeah.
I just assumed you were a 70s kid, that's okay.
No. So I was born in 84, so I would have been about 4 or 5 years old by the time that was in cinemas. I did watch the movie at quite a young age. I watched it when I was about 6 or 7 on VHS. So I certainly watched this before watching many other horror movies, and that's a part of the reason why it probably maintains its position as my number one favorite film. It's just, you tend to stick to those films that you fell in love with for the first time.
A movie like this, Child's Play, is such a, I'm assuming that if you're listening, you've probably seen the movie. It's probably one of the more popular horror movies out there. It's such a well-known movie. Trying to dissect it is, in my opinion, somewhat difficult.
The first scene, the scene where he first comes to life on screen, where the mum discovers the doll doesn't have any batteries and threatens to throw him in the fire.
That is a fantastic scene. That's one thing I really appreciate about this movie. It's like you said, it's a somewhat ludicrous premise, but there are very, very suspenseful and tense scenes in this movie, and that has to be one of the top ones. I remember seeing that when I was a kid. Just the very image of seeing the batteries fall out of the box. That's a stab through the heart. That's such a great scene. It's not, it's a simple scene, but it's so fantastic.
Yeah, and I think it's the combination of the voice, obviously, the unexpected foul language of the actual doll itself, just out of nowhere, just, calling her a slut and don't fuck with me, that type of thing.
Put me down, you bitch!
Yeah, so the combination of that and I think the detail that they went into to actually bring the doll to life with, all the facial expressions that it can make.
It looked pretty good, especially for something from the late 80s.
Yeah, I mean, you compare it to, and I haven't seen some of these other films for a long time, but something like Dolly Dearest. There was another one I think called Pinocchio's Revenge, which I used to watch a couple of times back in the 90s.
Yeah, that movie has a slightly different feel to it, but I actually would say Pinocchio's Revenge is also a pretty good movie, but it definitely does it compared to Child's Play.
Just in terms of comparing the doll from Child's Play to any of these other dolls or toys in other movies, you can see the difference in terms of the detail.
I'd say one scene that always stuck with me when it came to Child's Play was in which Andy is locked up in the institution, and he sees Chucky coming for him from outside the window. When I was a kid, because like I said at a young age, that scene always freaked me out because the kid can't do anything. He's locked in his room. He sees a guy coming for him and is basically screwed. So that when it comes to that scene, is one of the ones that sticks out of my mind when the most been thinking about this one, because that's a very suspenseful scene and just had a great feel to it.
Yeah, and I really enjoy that. Once again, this is more going into the detail of the doll itself, but how it actually transitions from being a toy to an actual, almost human.
Yes.
It gets the receding hairline, almost gets like a unibrow type thing going on, or at least hairier eyebrows. That level of detail, which doesn't really follow into any of the sequels, which is one small thing that I miss in the sequels, because it actually does visibly show you that he is becoming more human or that he is aging, whereas in the other films you just kind of see, okay, he's starting to bleed and that makes him more human.
Yeah, I can imagine it's probably somewhat difficult to keep that effect going.
Yeah, probably takes a lot more effort and time, I guess more money.
Yeah, I suspect that most people probably wouldn't even necessarily notice that much.
Well, yeah, I mean, you definitely notice it when you watch the behind the scenes.
Yes.
Especially for someone like me who actually has seen the movie so many times, and you can just pluck out every single detail in the movie. Maybe if you've watched it once or twice, you don't notice it as much as someone who's watched it 100 times. I also think with the ending, just how many times it seems like, okay, they've finally killed him, and he keeps coming back. They shoot him, they burn him, and even after he's been completely destroyed, he still keeps coming back.
It is an impressive display of perseverance.
Because it is my all-time favorite movie, I guess this goes without saying, but I think the last 10 seconds of the movie, where it's really dark and you just see the doll's head kind of just sitting there, and even then you're still kind of wondering, is he going to pop up again or do something? It's just a really good dark way to end that movie.
That's something I also like about this movie, the fact that, it's able to keep a very, very serious tone, with the mother worrying about whether or not a child's going crazy, and serial killer, within close contact with this kid for most of the movie. In a way, it's a very dark movie, And I suspect if you just see the poster, oh, a doll that kills people, you might think, oh, maybe that might just be a stupid movie. But honestly, the movie, it's done in a really, really good way.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a whole lot else that I can say about it, because to me, everything about it is great.
Well, I will say this is just this might show my ignorance more than anything, but it only took this last time when I watched the movie to realize that what's the guy's name? Chris Sarandon, who was the police detective, was also in Fright Night. Fright Night's probably one of my favorite vampire movies. So the fact that I'd seen both movies so many times, and then I finally connect, oh hey, that's the same guy from Fright Night. That was a sort of a kick myself in the face type moment.
Yeah, and Fright Night's also directed by the same person,
Yes.
Tom Holland.
Which is something I also didn't know until I had just recently seen Child's Play. So,
Yeah.
so there's something that just went right over my head. Another scene that always stuck with me in Child's Play was the voodoo scene, which I always, when I saw the movie when I was a kid, it's like, I was a bit confused, like what's going on here, but I also have appreciated just how violent. It might not even be on screen, but just how violent that whole sequence is when he's torturing that. Forget the guy's name, but sure you know who I'm talking about.
John Bishop,
Yes,
that's his name.
yes.
But they don't actually say his name in the movie, but if you freeze frame at some point,
I'm sure you have freeze framed.
you can see his name on one of the police reports. Yeah, that scene, it's basically a torture scene with a little doll.
Because I always like the idea of Chucky having to get so far away from where he's supposed to be. And he's just a doll just trying to pretend to be a toy left behind and like traveling a city bus just to get to this guy. Like going from a human being who can drive to being so dependent on people not noticing you. That's you can sort of tell why he's so angry.
I guess one thing about the movie that kind of it's not so much about the movie, it's about people's perception of the doll, where you come across these people who are like, well, it's a doll, just kick it across the room, what's so scary about it? With anything, I think there's always advantages and disadvantages to being big, small, whatever you are, and it doesn't quite explain, I guess, just how strong or tough he is. Where, I mean, we can look at him and say, yeah, it's easy enough to kick him across the room, but I'm guessing he has more strength than people realize. He's clearly tougher than people realize because it's very hard to kill him. So I don't really like it when people bring up, just kick him for a field goal.
I'll be honest, I've never actually thought about that before.
Oh, well, I mean, it's something I see all the time. And I'm sure I came across that again recently at some point. Yeah, anyone who doesn't really like the film, that's what they say about it, so...
It just hit me that I actually have a difficult time. I don't think if I've actually spoken to anybody who dislikes Child's Play. It seems to me it's just one of those movies... it's not quite on the same level as a movie like A Nightmare on Elm Street or The Evil Dead, but to a lot of people, I generally almost only hear positive things about this movie. So, I can't imagine somebody who actively dislikes it exactly what the point of view is, which might just be my ignorance, but there you go.
Yeah, so as I was saying, my all-time favorite film, love the character. I think it's a movie that far exceeds anyone's expectation of what that premise is. It has no right to be as good as it actually is. Dark, scary, good theme music. My score is obviously a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I think Child's Play does pretty much everything right. At the same time, I don't quite love it as much as Chucky does. But it's a really good movie. It's a very classic 80s movie. I don't have any necessary complaints about it. It's just that the movie doesn't necessarily blow me away as much as it might other people. That said, the movie is pretty dang good. It doesn't really waste any time. It's a very action-packed movie. Very, a lot of great scenes, especially, with Chucky in the vehicle with a police detective. He's just stabbing him through the seat. It's a fantastically suspenseful scene. And it's just a movie that I've seen quite a few times, and it's always an enjoyable experience. I always have a lot of fun with it. So I would give Child's Play probably an 8.5 out of 10, which is still a pretty high rating, not quite as good as a 10 out of 10, but 8.5 is no slouch. It's a really good movie, and I'd certainly recommend it if, for some reason, you've not seen it yet.
It's better than A Nightmare on Elm Street and Evil Dead.
Okay. No, but that's okay. Okay, I'll just say this, and then we can move on to the next movie. It is better than The Evil Dead. It's not better than Nightmare on Elm Street. And we can have a fight over that later.
Agree to disagree.